happens when a city's housing crisis turns into a political battlefield. In Washington, D.C., the struggle over homelessness is about far more than policy choices. It's about authority, accountability, and the deeper identity of the nation's capital. As the population without housing keeps growing, arguments over solutions grow sharper, dividing voices on federal involvement, local leadership, and the true roots of homelessness. Beyond statistics and talking points, real lives are playing out daily, and the decisions made today will influence the city's direction for decades ahead. So, how did this moment take shape? And what is actually being done to change the lives of people surviving in the shadows of the federal government that govern public life and policy debates today? The current state of homelessness in Washington, D.C. As of January 2025, Washington, D.C.'s annual point-in-time PIT count reported a meaningful 9% drop in homelessness compared with the year before. This reduction lowered the total number of people experiencing homelessness in the city to 538. Officials largely credit this decline to focused investments in homelessness prevention programs and expanded shelter capacity, signaling a coordinated effort to confront an ongoing crisis. Major actions included increasing available shelter beds and offering intensive case management, helping individuals avoid street homelessness and move toward more stable housing outcomes. During fiscal year 2024 alone, nearly 400 people were diverted from homelessness through prevention strategies, while more than 900 families and individuals secured permanent housing through publicly funded voucher programs. Another important milestone was the opening of the Aston, Washington, D.C.'s first shelter, created specifically for single adults. This development addressed a long-overlooked population and represented a meaningful shift in how the city approaches homelessness reduction. Even with these encouraging gains, serious challenges persist, especially regarding unsheltered homelessness. On any given night, the Community Partnership estimates that roughly 800 people in DC remain unsheltered, living in tents vehicles or other unstable settings. These residents face the highest risks, including exposure to harsh weather violence and limited access to hygiene facilities and healthcare. Additionally, the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments reported a troubling 19% rise in unsheltered homelessness from 2024 to 2025, showing the crisis is far from resolved. This increase underscores the ongoing struggles of the city's most marginalized residents and highlights the need for sustained attention and creative solutions. As Washington, D.C. moves forward in confronting homelessness, it must carefully balance immediate responses with long-term structural reforms to truly support its most vulnerable neighbors. What do you believe is the most urgent force driving homelessness in Washington, D.C.? And how can meaningful progress towards solutions begin? Federal action and the shifting political landscape. In August 2025, President Donald Trump issued a controversial statement announcing plans to move homeless individuals out of Washington, D.C. He justified the proposal by citing public safety concerns and the city's appearance, especially in highly visible zones near the Capitol. Trump promised to provide housing locations far from the Capitol, a pledge that immediately raised serious legal and moral questions about both practicality and ethics. The White House has not clearly explained what legal authority would allow such a plan, since presidential power in the city is largely limited to federal land and buildings. The concept of forcing people to relocate has sparked worries about potential violations of the rights of DC residents, along with doubts about whether suitable housing options even exist elsewhere. Is relocating people without homes a workable answer, or does it simply move the crisis out of sight without confronting its deeper causes? Critics argue that this strategy frames homelessness as an image issue rather than a complex social and economic problem demanding long-term solutions. City leaders, including Mayor Muriel Bowser, swiftly pushed back against the federal proposal, noting that Washington, D.C. is not seeing a major rise in crime, a central argument used to justify relocation. Bowser and other officials warned that such actions could weaken local self-rule and overstep the authority granted to DC residents. They also stressed that the proposal ignores core drivers of homelessness, such as the shortage of affordable housing and limited mental health care, while risking greater harm to vulnerable people. This moment has fueled a wider discussion about the proper balance between federal influence and local control, particularly on social challenges like homelessness. Opponents maintain that the top-down strategy promoted by the Trump administration is unlikely to deliver lasting solutions to the structural roots of homelessness in Washington, D.C. Instead, they argue it may result in short-term measures that fall short of offering real lasting relief to those living through the crisis. How federal policies affect local communities. The suggested federal move to relocate homeless individuals from Washington, D.C. has sparked serious concern about how it could affect local communities. Policy experts warn that these actions may worsen homelessness rather than solve it. By breaking apart existing support networks, federal involvement risks uprooting vulnerable people without offering realistic or effective alternatives. People experiencing homelessness who depend on local shelters, meal programs and medical services could suddenly lose access to critical support, making the path towards stability and independence even more difficult. Community-based organizations like House of Ruth and So Others Might Eat have strongly criticized the federal proposal. These groups play a vital role in the city's response to homelessness, offering not only emergency shelter, but also long-term assistance such as job readiness programs, recovery services, and mental health care. Leaders within these organizations fear that federal interference could undo years of progress, leading to deeper hardship for the people they serve. Instead of receiving personalized and coordinated care, individuals could be pushed further to the margins, cut off from the trusted networks they rely on daily. The potential loss of local authority over homelessness policy also raises serious alarms. Washington, D.C. has developed targeted strategies designed around the specific needs of its residents, understanding that uniform solutions rarely work. Federal directives could limit the city's ability to respond with compassion and practical judgment, adding new layers of complexity to an already fragile situation. Maintaining local control is critical to developing thoughtful responses that reflect the lived realities of people experiencing homelessness. Ultimately, this situation forces a difficult question. Is federal intervention truly the right path for solving deeply complex social challenges that demand local insight and community-driven solutions? how substance use fuels the homelessness crisis. Substance use, especially the widespread presence of opioids such as fentanyl, plays a major role in the ongoing homelessness crisis in Washington, D.C. The National Institute on Drug Abuse has documented a troubling increase in opioid-related overdose deaths in urban centers, including the district. This rise points to a deepening public health emergency that is closely connected to homelessness, as many people are battling addiction while also living without stable housing. For those struggling with substance use disorders, achieving stability becomes far more challenging. Many property owners see individuals with addiction histories as risky tenants, making it extremely difficult for them to obtain long-term housing. Emergency shelters, while critical for many, often refuse people dealing with active substance use because of concerns about safety and disruptive behavior. This creates a damaging cycle where individuals with addiction are left without secure supportive spaces, worsening their substance use and intensifying social isolation. Consider the case of James, a middle-aged man who has battled heroin addiction for more than 10 years. James ended up living on the streets of DC after losing both his job and his home. Over the years, he moved in and out of shelters, never able to remain anywhere for long. Each attempt to access shelter ended the same way, with rejection tied to his addiction. With no alternatives, he slept outdoors where his drug use escalated. The ongoing instability kept him from entering treatment, and without housing recovery, felt out of reach. James's experience is far from rare. It reflects the reality faced by many in DC, where homelessness and addiction are tightly intertwined. Solving this problem requires more than simply providing housing. It calls for a coordinated strategy that combines shelter with addiction care and mental health support. Programs that link stable housing with accessible treatment offer a way to interrupt the cycle, giving people like James a real opportunity to start over. Only by addressing homelessness and substance abuse together can lasting recovery and long-term stability truly become possible. Root factors driving homelessness in the district. Homelessness in Washington, D.C. is not a standalone problem, but the outcome of several overlapping forces rooted in the city's social and economic structure. One of the most significant drivers is the rising cost of living, especially housing expenses. As rents continue to climb and affordable units grow harder to find, many low-income residents are pushed out of the housing market and into unstable living conditions. When housing costs surge beyond reach, fewer people can maintain secure homes, resulting in higher eviction rates and eventually homelessness. Beyond financial pressures, long-standing systemic issues like limited mental health care and substance use disorders strongly contribute to the continuation of homelessness. A large share of individuals experiencing homelessness also struggle with mental health conditions that make it difficult to keep stable housing. Without reliable access to mental health support and addiction treatment, many are forced to manage these challenges alone, reducing their chances of regaining stability. The expiration of pandemic-era protections, including eviction bans and emergency rental aid, has also had a major impact on homelessness. These short-term measures had shielded many vulnerable residents from losing their homes during COVID. Now that those protections have ended, individuals already living on the edge have been pushed into increasingly unstable situations. The disappearance of these safety nets has fueled growth in the homeless population, particularly among people who were barely managing housing costs even before the pandemic. Confronting the root causes of homelessness in Washington, D.C. demands a broad, coordinated response. This means expanding affordable housing options while also strengthening mental health care and addiction treatment services. To truly reduce homelessness, the city must commit to long-term integrated solutions that address poverty, mental illness, and substance use, together opening real paths towards stability and renewed independence. The future outlook for people experiencing homelessness in Washington, D.C. The outlook for people experiencing homelessness in Washington, D.C. depends heavily on whether strong, accessible support systems are available. Without these critical resources, the future remains bleak for many as they confront ongoing obstacles that make it hard to break free from poverty and ongoing instability. One key factor in achieving long-term stability is access to legal assistance. Groups such as the Washington Legal Clinic for the Homeless offer essential help by defending the rights of individuals facing eviction or housing discrimination. They guide clients through complicated legal processes, challenge unlawful evictions, and help secure housing protections. For many people who do not understand their legal rights or cannot afford private attorneys, this support becomes a lifeline. By removing legal barriers, these organizations help prevent homelessness from deepening and give individuals a real chance at securing permanent housing. Still, the impact of these services is often constrained by limited funding and inconsistent support. Many non-profits providing housing aid, legal help, and mental health care operate under tight financial restrictions, limiting their ability to grow or provide ongoing assistance. In addition, without a coordinated citywide homelessness strategy that focuses on prevention, intervention, and long-term solutions, people frequently cycle back into homelessness. Persistent problems such as scarce affordable housing, inadequate mental health services, and limited access to addiction treatment continue to keep individuals trapped in instability. To create lasting change, Washington, D.C. must move beyond short-term emergency responses. This includes investing in prevention efforts, like expanding affordable housing and offering financial help to residents at risk of losing their homes. Intervention approaches should integrate mental health care, addiction treatment, and workforce training. Above all, long-term housing solutions are necessary to end the cycle of homelessness. Without these comprehensive actions, many homeless individuals in DC will continue facing an uphill battle toward stable, lasting housing. A personal reflection on the crisis. From my point of view, homelessness in Washington, D.C. is not simply the result of personal shortcomings, but a sign of larger systemic failures that require immediate and ongoing attention. The hardships faced by people experiencing homelessness are closely tied to issues such as housing costs, mental health challenges, substance use, and widening economic inequality. Although efforts like expanding shelter capacity and offering legal support are meaningful steps forward, they cannot stand alone as complete solutions. The city must stop treating homelessness as a short-term emergency to control and instead recognize it as a complex social condition that calls for sustained long-range strategies. This requires not only better access to immediate assistance, but also direct action on root causes, including the shortage of affordable housing and gaps in mental health care. It is also critical to understand that homelessness often follows a repeating cycle. Without fixing systemic breakdowns, people will continue slipping through the cracks regardless of how many shelters or temporary units exist. At the same time, community involvement and local organizations are vital to real progress. Government action by itself is insufficient. Partnerships with non-profits businesses and neighborhood residents are essential to building durable solutions. If Washington, D.C. truly aims to end homelessness, it must adopt a holistic strategy centered on prevention, long-term stability, and reintegration, not quick fixes. In the end, confronting homelessness demands a shared compassionate commitment that goes beyond providing beds and helps people rebuild their lives with dignity, opportunity, and support. Conclusion. Homelessness in Washington, D.C. is a complicated problem that mirrors deeper challenges within society as a whole. Although the city has made measurable progress in lowering the number of people experiencing homelessness, recent political shifts and structural problems risk undoing that progress. To achieve lasting change, a balanced strategy is needed, one that honors local authority, confronts the root causes of homelessness, and delivers broad coordinated support to those impacted. As the country watches its capital, the question still stands: can Washington, D.C. align its role as a symbol of democracy with the ongoing reality of homeless in America?